When people visit Singapore for the first time and make YouTube videos about it, they often mention how they can't chew gum there, which inevitably leads to corrective YouTube comments saying that chewing gum is legal, but selling gum is not. Good stuff. But one thing that caught my attention recently was learning that 30 to 40% of Singapore's water supply is recycled wastewater, a percentage that will grow to 55% in the near future. So Singaporeans drink their own, albeit recycled wastewater? That's interesting. How did that happen? NEWater is a brand of recycled wastewater first introduced to the water supply in 2003 by Singapore's Public Utilities Board, or PUB. Obviously, all water is recycled via the Earth's water cycle, but you might react a little viscerally when you ponder about where that water in a bottle might have been just a few weeks ago. So yeah, the interesting thing to me was how PUB got widespread acceptance of their NEWater. In this brief video, let us drink in a bit about Singapore's NEWater initiative. But first, I want to remind you about the newsletter. Check out the newsletter to read the entire scripts for previously released videos, including those you might not have seen before. The sign-up link is in the video description below. I try to put one out once every week, maybe two. Alright, back to the show. Our modern municipal sewage systems first emerged in the 1800s as a public health measure. Maybe the most famous is London's. Heavy industrialization and urbanization were contaminating the water supply, leading to big cholera outbreaks in 1832, 1849, and 1855. Then we had the bad as it sounds great stink of 1858, where hot weather and human waste in the River Thames caused a titanic smell. This smell, or miasma, was thought to be the cause for the aforementioned cholera outbreaks. This finally prompted the London authorities to assign Sir Joseph William Bazalgette the colossally expensive task of building a modern sewage system. It worked, though not exactly for the reasons thought so at the time. Wastewater refers to water with its quality affected by human activities. There is industrial wastewater discharged from industrial locations like your semiconductor fab. This water is usually treated on-site, per regulations, before being discharged to the sewers. And then there is domestic or municipal wastewater. This comes from homes, schools, hospitals, and places like malls. This wastewater is mostly made up of three things. 1. Soaps and detergents. 2. Gray water from showers, sinks, and clothes washing. And 3. Black water from toilet flushes, which, yes, does include human poo-poo and pee-pee. For this and all other types of wastewater, you treat it using one of three types of treatments. Physical treatment, sedimentation, screening, filtration, so on, for the removal of suspended solids. Chemical treatment, where we add chemicals to remove solids, disinfect, and remove phosphorus. And biological treatment, this is where we use microorganisms to remove biodegradable organic matter in the water to an acceptable level. Today, all sewage is treated to a certain degree, but wastewater treatment plants can put the wastewater through an assortment of stages to get that water to a certain quality. A preliminary and primary stage, which use a variety of physical and chemical treatments to remove suspended solids. Then, there is a secondary treatment for removing nutrients like nitrogen. Such nutrient removal has become increasingly important. After that, we have tertiary and advanced treatment stages targeting specific items. These are needed if we want to use the water for something like drinking. At least half of America's water treatment plants treat water up to the secondary stage. For many cities, this is good enough, and the water is then tossed into a natural body of water like a river or a lake. This might be a bit of a waste. For instance, in water-starved California, a 2018 study found that 1,407 megagallons of treated wastewater, or effluent as it is called, is tossed into the ocean or used for irrigation and industry. This is equivalent to some 35% of the state's domestic demand, and we just throwing that into nature or even the ocean, which I think has no shortage of water. Of course, the very significant reason why we have this situation is the yuck factor associated with drinking recycled wastewater. The key phrase that has come up again and again is toilet to tap. Originated by a member of Miller Brewing's PR staff, it first appeared in a Los Angeles Times story in 1993. The phrase goes viral all over the newspaper media. Miller coined it to protest a reclaimed water project in Southern California's San Gabriel Valley at the time, but this backfired on them and they withdrew the campaign. The phrase bobbed back up again in 2000 in the San Fernando Valley, an urbanized area in Los Angeles County. Since 1990, the area's Department of Water and Power had been building a pipeline that would use reclaimed water to recharge the local aquifer. Seemingly uncontroversial, the project dripped along as normal until a homeowner went to a local paper, telling them that the department was poisoning the water supply. The paper ran daily stories of all the horrible things that happened to people who drank reclaimed water. Despite already spending $55 million, Mayor James Hahn turned the project off. Similar stories have occurred in Tampa Bay, Florida, and San Diego, California. Neighboring Orange County receives 100 million gallons a day of reclaimed water. None of that is used for drinking or tap. Gosh, well, that's just California, right? NIMBY crazies. Well, so let us turn our gaze to Australia, to the town of Toowoomba in southeastern Queensland, home to 95,000 people. The town gets its water from 3 dammed catchments, which reached unprecedentedly low levels in the early 2000s. After placing water use restrictions and demand initiatives, the City Council issued a policy document that mentioned a range of solutions, including the construction of a potable quality recycled water factory. Public opposition rapidly cascaded against the initiative, politicizing it. 6 months later, 10,000 people signed a petition against the water factory, coining phrases like Toowoomba. A plumber said at the time, "Well, the problem with the purifying, and my biggest concern, is that the impact of drinking treated sewage wastewater will have on my family and all other families. And I'm concerned because there is no guarantee. There is absolutely no evidence that the treated sewage wastewater is free of all contaminants." In July 2006, Toowoomba held a referendum on the project, and 62% of the residents voted against it, despite a serious ongoing drought. The project was abandoned. My point is as clear as the water itself. The single biggest obstacle to recycled wastewater projects is neither technology or engineering. It is community support. Now, you might be thinking that Singapore is different. People trust the government, or that they are compliant to its operations, Asian collectivist culture, so on, yada yada yada. But the reality is that Singapore holds elections, and the People's Action Party has to win those elections to stay in power. They can't just steamroll popular sentiment, or they can spill an election. Like many other urbanized areas in the world, Singapore is a water-stressed city, reliant on imports for a significant portion of its water supplies. I already discussed Singapore's water issues, which intimately tie into its political relations with neighbor and frenemy Malaysia in a previous video, so I'll skip all that. The main point is that Singapore's geopolitical status pushed it to develop new sources of water, or NEWater. The systems behind NEWater date back to the 1960s to a product called industrial water. First introduced in 1966, industrial water was a non-potable alternative source of water for industries operating on Jurong Island as well as the Jurong/Tuas location. They tried to build a potable water recycling factory even back then, but abandoned it for cost reasons. Over the next few decades, the government's Ministry of Environment continued to monitor water filtration technologies, waiting for them to sufficiently mature. By the time NEWater moved forward in 1998, NEWater's core reverse osmosis technologies had been used in the United States for over 20 years. The Singapore government first built a prototype demonstration plant in 2000 in Bedok. After extensive tests and training, the government made its first big leap forward with 3 plants. Ultimately, the vast majority of NEWater is blended back into the reservoirs. Most of the rest is destined for industrial or cooling use, rather than drinking. It is estimated that NEWater makes up just 5% of the water coming out of the tap. So you can't exactly buy NEWater bottles. What you see in the photographs are part of the public relations campaign. Pub's foremost issue when it came to introducing NEWater to the public was how to avoid a backlash like what happened in California and Australia. In those situations, water administrations had moved forward with the project like as if normal, but were caught off guard by a negative response. The Singapore government has made water self-sufficiency a critical policy goal. They frequently talk about it. It is good to have political support at the highest levels, but negative responses can still arise despite particularly dire water shortages, like how it was in Australia. People will care more about the quality of their water than its quantity. PUB decided to be proactive in addressing the public's psychological yuck factor. The key goal in its public relations campaign was to move the public's focus away from where the water was coming from to how they were treating the water. This wasn't necessarily easy. Boiling down complex technologies like reverse osmosis for the average layperson to understand is hard, but by focusing on process rather than source, they can build confidence in the quality of the output. Phrases in the Straits Times called NEWater systems a marvel of modern engineering, a major technological breakthrough, and state-of-the-art. And articles noted how California water managers were looking to adopt Singapore's technologies for themselves, implying that Singapore has surpassed the Americans in water technology. In focusing on the process, PUB can also validate the water safety with a mountain of data. During the demo period, PUB took 20,000 test results in 7 locations inside the plant, testing for 190 physical, chemical, and microbiological parameters. Over 4,500 test results for NEWater found that it had surpassed WHO and United States EPA drinking water standards. This torrent of testing data helped convince policymakers and experts, both foreign and local, to back it. The toilet-to-tap debacle shows the runaway power of words with negative connotation. So, PUB deliberately tried to reframe the context by using phrases that emphasize the water's value as a resource, which of course it was. So, rather than saying wastewater, or worse yet, sewage, PUB communications would say used water. The goal was to dispel the public's predisposed stigmas and come around to the notion that this water had value. Media articles flipped the toilet-to-tap notion, again emphasizing the process and end product with phrases like good as new. And PUB engaged both the media and the community early on. One key message was that water reclamation was already being successfully practiced in countries like the United States for 20 years. It was far from new. So before launching NEWater, PUB brought members of the media abroad to water reclamation locations in the United States, Orange County in Arizona for instance. This led to articles written about water reclamation already being a normal part of society in the US. Documentaries aired on local television, briefings were arranged with grassroots leaders and business groups in order to avoid misunderstandings. Interestingly, Singapore's semiconductor industry was engaged early on. Semiconductor manufacturing requires a great deal of ultra-pure water. They had never drew reclaimed water to source their ultra-pure water before, but PUB worked closely with them on it, helping to build a UPW plant specifically for them. Their endorsement helped assure public opinion of NEWater's purity. And of course, the central aspect of the public messaging was the NEWater Visitor Center, a new water museum for anyone interested in learning more about how NEWater was made. This came with bottled NEWater for the public to sample themselves. Major high-level leaders appeared at the visitor center's opening, another public endorsement of the water's safety. This geyser of engagement did its job. Communications work dribbles on, but NEWater has largely been accepted as a part of Singapore society. There is very little that is new about NEWater. The tech has been around for decades, and the water is being blended into natural resources just like anywhere else. But it was really interesting to me just how the government approached the problem of building widespread acceptance amongst a public oft sensitive about the quality of their food and water. As the world's climate continues to change and urbanization continues, water shortages will become a serious problem. With that, tossing reclaimed water into the ocean makes increasingly less sense. But this can lead to more situations like what happened in California and Australia. Overcoming this barrier is a legitimate social issue. Singapore's approach can help. Alright everyone, that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, sign up for the newsletter, and I'll see you guys next time.